And what said the Lord to Baruch of the great things of which he may have felt entitled, to which he may have felt entitled? Seek them not. Yet I'm sure that they shall leave me alive, if but they must, to let me seek my life like prey, and chased my days once like blind ambition. But it will be without, and from the dust. And, well, are we not thankless servants? We fight the good fight, am I right? Okay, off you go now. To your drudgery, then, and keep bitching, that seems to be working. Stay crazy too, you shiny diamond you. That seems as just as well. The swell of pretty flower smell, and also tell of lonesome hell, but just as well. And right, sorry for wielding you like a whirlwind at unawares. Anywho, but mind your mettle. Perhaps someday the wind'll settle. For there is contention about, and I am someone's sharp sword, or their versatile tool, or the bait of another's trap. Unless I'm nothing but deceived delusional, another ego out of touch with its true dimension, and desperate to maintain itself, and to provide answers to its disproportionate plight, without approaching personal failure. Another Looney Tune balloon, laboring to hold on to the helium that inflates it above its buoyancy, which hapless proton pair cannot stay there, but, if not popped of pressure to escape, shall be drawn depressed from the rubber regardless, by the slow reality of physics. In which case the point is moot and inconsequential. Else, what terror needs the minnow feel for catfish and electric eel? His has such a little stake in contention for the lake. Yet I'm not so vascular in my own venom, so staunch and immediately irreversible. But to the antidote of more apparent argument from another always absent, to what ration of reproach my arise once rendered, so virtually virile to my vehement advances, that his biology cannot, by mitosis respirate, entice and so subdue the cold chemical calculate of the virus mechanic dysbiologic, so I likewise were divorced to the receptive inhale of this carbon compromise, bereft of daily breath, and ignorant to the ignoble record of whole human history, that I cannot negotiate nor hardly recognize this Caucasian countenance in a mirror. In fact, but not last week I felt like a moron, tilting alone in my aunt's car, which I try not to ever do. Tilt in my aunt's car, that is. I usually attempt more etiquette than to so taint her transport by trash-talking in my travel. I cannot help it, but that I'm mostly moronic, or that for all wisdom, and what knowledge should make me wise, and the wiser I were, how only more so surely were I aware, that all I know is that I don't. But just last week it was, and I out and about, and driving serene between, doing all I can to merely meander on my meager way, and without as I might make mess of something, for as I am mankind, remember, and mayhem around my manifold does manifest. Yet there I was, going 45 in a 45, riding in the right of two lanes, going our way, down Route 30, as it were. And his eye was still 30, when the guy behind me, a cocky Vato and a sharp luxury model, would but could not pass me, despite for the growling engine of his great Navigate, paint of pristine white legislate, in spotless venue to vehicular virtue, whatever's gained a driving by gaudy gild, and rims of glistening gyrate, and windows all as lava glass, less the windshield, which was too, but lessly, and tinted dark to void shade, like onyx stone. As he quickly closed the distance, our small cluster of cars cruised congruent in casual convoy. Beside me, in the left lane, and proceeding at my same pace, two cars divided the lengths of my aunt's car, that between the vertices of our traveling triangle there was no gap open to the guy behind me, the guy with the gratuitous gild, of divine drive and God-given gear, through which he might weave and so pass on ahead. As one might expect, the overwhelming emotional conflict created by such obnoxious contradiction, to be in control of a car so kick-ass, to operate rides so pimpin' bro, so altogether bitchin' and cock-twitchin', yet to be forced, like some pussy in a V6, or some faggy four-cylinder, to abide by the posted speed limit, obviously caused the subject some great deal of stress. The sudden confrontation of which minor inconvenience, the poor thing, he had hardly wherewithal to even so little reconcile, and none whatsoever to assuage. Naturally, then, wanting to go faster, needing to speed without heed, but being in both lanes prevented from practicing such implicit right as bestowed by mechanical selection upon apex horsepower, this, of course, aroused outrage within the subject, which, we all need be grateful, didn't exacerbate onto full-blown rampage, but merely instead, the hombre hothead, he tailed hot behind me, and at such close challenge that his headlights were below my rear-view sight, to encourage my acceleration, which he ultimately failed to obtain. And this continued for some time, until maneuver at his left crevice presented gamble, which he ultimately failed to forego. In a moment, by, around, he zoomed ahead, then merged immediately in front of my front bumper, yet only to render my recompense for his lost velocity of my villainy, and illustrate my incurred curse of his shit list. Within 100 yards, halting abruptly before me and turning right deliberately short of notice. Amidst the ranting answer of my displeasure, I demanded answer of the steering wheel. What kind of people just go into another country and then disdain any decency to the people of the country that just took you in, or at the very least has tolerated your different presence? As all peoples and all societies all the world over, throughout all history, and over all record of its memory, have taken exception to their own encumbrance and encroachment by foreign intrusion. Of course, I quickly realized how obtuse such sentiment should sound to most non-whites, for as much as would seem, invasion and injustice for the longest time has been the company motto of the white enterprise. And as Caucasia, though it probably cannot be credited with inventing the behavior, yet it has certainly demonstrated its aptitude for oppression. The first ballot inductee, undoubtedly, and setting its qualitative precedent, too, for the past millennium or two. But I didn't do whatever throughout the decades was done. Neither do I do those things now, nor am I anyone's oppressor. And the same that oppress everyone oppress me. So, roll me a burrito, El Dorito, and let me just bag you at the brand. Because like I said, I've only helped their hatred for the last 4 months. Before that, I gave them never offense. Right, except for that one time alone in the car with my brother, but I mean, if they want to line up behind some abominable baby-beating beasts, take offense on behalf of some of Shrek's 6 sociopathic sisters, then be my guest. And then gladly go fuck off and die. Because I don't give a shit whatsoever anyone should say about the freak show mutants that are carted out, led on stage, and brought to the public's attention on Jerry Springer. Otherwise, the only reason that they would be offended is because I was right, but not by half of honest breadth. And it becomes less their Hispanic secret the more that white people should speak on it. Because I've been in Yorkville only 16 months, and this, as I've established, is when association with Hispanics, or more tangible or familiar, or really any personal acquaintance, even began, with the exception, as I've explained, of but those hours sharing company at the same place, shoveling snow with Snovar, sitting sometimes within the same running van, several Hispanics at once, with the other white guy and I, waiting on site, on the clock, either compliant with Snovar's obligation unto its companies under contract, or someone called in sight to site in preparedness, anticipating inches of snow forecasted to fall, or between bouts of precipitation in progress, to shovel and salt whatever square footage thereafter, in repeating cycles of billable futility spanning continuous hours of winter storms at a time. Which hours, though, I could probably tally total on my 20 primate digits. And besides only else, like I said, that month of proximity among the same toxic, dusty air of sovereign marble, in which I interacted with virtually nobody, put aside to a little area on my own to wreck my wrists alone, banging dry plaster from off of plastic buckets with a blunt metal rod. And for only the most recent 11 of these 16 Yorkville months, less probably have I even had a car, wherein, within its closed windows, all the air's access to my any audible abstract, in that I speak not, but by jot give muse to wandering thought, alone in my aunt's basement, and but for boredom began in my car to annul enunciate my ponder. And as I've so little presence among other people with whom I might share speech. The first of these 16 months, the first of that immobile first 5 that remain, it hardly seems relevant, or so as I've reminisced of late, in that it was spent, or so now it seems to hindsight, waiting, as it were, for the wind to waft the smell of shit my way, or else that I, a fly, went buzzing by, however though, and unto so, that both for my meager magnitude and the morbid metabolic of its combined bottom feed, as some apt likening to maggot, I spent the latter 4 ensuing months that followed, of those first stranded 5, part-time consuming, but every waking daily hour digesting, the economic carrion, the spiritual swill mill that was the awful car wash, and the competent experience of working there, washing me, in fair expungement, for each minute so humbled, of each infraction of my lowly sins, and exercising me my every proud demon, one towel dry by hand at a time. And while racial tension was a factor there, even playing a pivotal part in my experience working at the car wash, it was hereditary. It was hereditary, insomuch that my blood is near whole Britannia, mixed with but a dash of paternal-maternal Deutsch, toward no doubt my diligent industry and relentless endeavor, with both halves tracing descendants to the Mayflower voyage, and my Big Ben, too, becoming by birthright, in that, by its binary trinary on my body, a boy I was born, and by blood's code on my body, it is big. And insomuch that Javi, who hates dogs, who wants to kill dogs, the perpetrator of the workplace racism, is small of frame, adherent to long cocoa leaf lineage, and in his mind is but a small little male, for that his manhood, which is also little and small, like his hateful hot-blooded distemperament, which is certainly culpable unto Javi's charge, is conveyed by chromosome. But which heated component of chromosome, though, is somewhat culprit, as among larger demographic trend for an overheated disposition, yet under the climate's accomplice, evinced via long progeny within equatorial environment, that people, though universally umbrate longitudinally, yet along less latitude, by the sun are hotter heated, meaning, I think, more prone, like geologically baked anthropologic proclivity, to an inflamed or reactionary display or dispensation of displeasure once displeased. Which also, however, is not to assert that the choler of equatorial people is more easily aroused than it is from peoples of moderate climate, for malice among all men is ever so simply elicited, only that, while some species seem to steam, others wear still yet colder stoic. Neither of which, though, a temperament literally more heated, captured in chromosome, and given unto intense emotionality, or its geologic coefficient, adjudicate Javi's particularly anatomical anger, but both his naturally hotter hormone and his baby dick, both unto blood, are blamable only in relativity, as trait and behavior by varying degrees unto genetics are bound, and predisposed but not predetermining. For like as biology's nurturing quality unto its own trait is impacted individually by the nature of the society upon itself, so that ultimately Javi's hatred seemed less hubris than hereditary, and instinctual like zoologic rivalry. That Javi's angry, irritable proclivity towards me was inherited, but he's not very different from the others of that kind, while his baby dick and its subsequent contribution to his fermented needle dictitude was merely unfortunate, for not every Hispanic is like that, or suffers from that ineptitude. But because by mistake he beheld my big Brit, accidentally saw the wide arc Anglo over my Saxon, and how low its arc length hangs below my waist of a 5'8" white boy, not much taller than his own height. Wherefore, Javi hated me. Wherefore, Javi cursed all England, and the British crown, and the whales too at SeaWorld, for that perhaps he heard once how an English prince bears their name and title, with glory from, and in sovereign over the cetacean. For what whale blubber wounded him when he abruptly walked into the bathroom, and was made witness to the white wonder of my Moby Dick. And he hated all Scots together, for Malcolm's royal sceptre which he saw me holding in my hand. Notwithstanding, beyond Javi, whose hostility at the car wash was merely an annoyance throughout, and whose company, but therefore, I consistently avoided, there were, of course, other Hispanics too that worked alongside. And one of them even, in fact, called me months after that I had quit the car wash, under the dubious circumstance of maintaining and attempting to build into a friendship our once obligatory yet utterly trivial and uninvested acquaintance. Any suspicion that I'm now left with is purely speculative, after the point, and I perceive none other prejudice amongst them. None directed toward me personally, anyhow, during the time that I was there. Besides them and all that, though, the significant sodomites at the car wash were all municipal Caucasians, a breed of secular pathogen that reached epidemic in Prussian Europe, and then pandemic in World War I, then again in World War II, but which germ strand traces its civic parasite back to ancient Sparta. And I left the job with the car wash no more wary of Latins than I had been before I began it. Then 6 months at the inn, a rare glimpse there of female race relations in a vacuum, as it were, and more or less, except for my male presence, at times like a strange case study of diverse menstrual cycles clashing, no more than that. No real race rivalry to speak of, unto my complaint at least, and for my part, for my employment, as per my introspection, that was all sexual politic, and me and my main would soon must maneuver between competing packs of Latina lionesses. Not because I'm special either, but because they also hated each other, and so would use me to make the others jealous. Each little clique making to monopolize my attention, then flaunting it when she or AS had it, and deliberately denying my easier company with Las Otras whenever they may. Still, they might have acted the same way towards a male mannequin if one were stood within the dining area. In no time, they'd be daily competing at lunch to claim the table closest to him, Manuel the mannequin. It was just that during the hours of maid service, I was the only male on staff, for all intents and purposes, other than Ron, of course, the 80-something-year-old walking prostate cancer, the reprehensible inconvenience and all but fossilized gullet sack that was the place's sales director. And I've recoiled of some unsavory characters in my day, but few have been quite so regrettable, quite so offensive to total sensibility as Ron and his squealy piglet voice. All the aesthetic of a senile, sagging, liver-spotted rat, with all the charm of a Catholic priest at a sorority party, or any other place where females are likely to have pubic hair, to imply a basic absence, or none whatsoever at all. But I think I'd credit more to the lucky cartoon leprechaun on the cereal box. The perverted old Belch thought he was being real cute when, just to be cheeky, as she and I would be conversing at the front desk, he would ask the weekday secretary, another repugnant mudslug, about her excretion habits, her wiping habits, 1 and 2, and other deplorable details and hideous horrors that God himself repents him of. But as Ron technically may yet, as yet still it breathes and slobbers and swallows and schemes, and as the thing does yet still move among the living, as though it were, and were not instead some galvanized ghoul of degraded gangrene, lingering at some loathsome limbo between post-mortem spasm and the precipice of decay, to feed still on laughter and hopes and joy and little dreams. But as Ron, I say, as he just may, in all actuality, yet still be discovered of his rare and gruesome species of giant rodent, long prior thought to be extinct, I guess I could have been the only male on staff after all, during regular business hours at any rate.